Yeah, within like 1 week, he like strangled me a few times. Because of that frequency, I got very scared.
After years of psychological and physical abuse, a Vancouver woman says her husband has fled to Taiwan with their child. She's worried she may never see her son again.
BC taking a targeted approach to register and get COVID-19 vaccine to everyone eligible in Fraser Health, especially Surrey.
And in some cases, people will be eligible for vaccine that day if there's appointments available at the clinic.
Huge increase in anti-Chinese sentiment on the street.
Following what's been a difficult year in Vancouver's Chinatown due to increased street crime and an alarming spike in anti-Asian hate crime, Vancouver police now say they're increasing their visibility in the neighborhood.
For that first month my son was born, it was rough. Yeah, within like 1 week, he like strangled me a few times.
After suffering years of alleged abuse from her husband, a Vancouver woman is now terrified she may never see her 5-year-old son again. And a warning, the images in this story are graphic.
I just keep thinking like, oh my God, like if my child stays in Taiwan, like what is he gonna become?
It's been a year and a half since Jane C. has seen her child in person. C. and her Taiwanese husband had their son Leander in 2015. They seemed like a happy couple in public, but behind closed doors, C. says she lived in fear.
The first time he strangled me, I remember very clearly, was basically he left the bathroom in a mess, and then when I told him about it, he thought that I was making things up and offending him again. He got very flushed and then said, "It's not true," and then just like stapled me to the floor, and that's the first time he strangled me, and it was like I couldn't breathe for like a good 10 seconds. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna die.
C's husband did face an assault charge for an alleged attack on her in 2015, but that charge was stayed at her request, which is common in cases of domestic abuse. Angela McDougall is with the Battered Women's Support Society. She says C's situation is all too familiar and says people will often stay in abusive relationships believing the best course of action is to try and keep the family together.
The reasons why women stay in abusive relationships is so that their children can have a father and to kind of maintain the idea of a nuclear family.
For years, C continued to live with the abuse. As time passed, she says her husband would often take their son to his home country of Taiwan to visit his family there. So when he told his wife they would be going again in 2020, C didn't think much of it.
I never even thought of the fact that he might keep baby there, and then COVID happened.
The chaos of the pandemic convinced C to allow her son to stay in Taiwan with his father, waiting for things to cool down. But months after the father and son arrived, C received a shocking letter.
The first document I opened, it was saying like, this is granting my son citizenship. And then I proceed to read it, and it's like, oh, you are being sued for divorce in a Taiwanese court.
In the second part of our series, we look at C's fight to try and get her son home and why, according to advocates, this impossible situation happens far too often.
To me, I just always had faith that it will all work out. Like the truth wins. Like, I believe in that, but now I'm just like, what is the world becoming?
Ashley Burr, City News.
There are 694 new cases of COVID-19 across the province tonight, and one more death has been reported in the last day. 457 people are currently in hospital, 154 are in intensive care. BC has also reported its first case of a blood clot linked to the Astrazeneca vaccine. The person affected is a woman in her 40s. She's in stable condition in hospital in the Vancouver Coastal Health Region. Dr. Bonnie Henry insists the Astrazeneca vaccine is safe.
We can, however, be confident for those who have received the AstraZeneca vaccine here in BC that this is an excellent vaccine. It is safe and it is effective, and we only need look at places like the UK to see how effective it is in preventing transmission.
Meantime, anyone 49 and older can now book their vaccine appointment. Vancouver Coastal Health has announced the opening of a targeted vaccination clinic at Killarney Community Centre in Vancouver. It's for anyone 30 years of age and older who lives in one of 8 high-transmission neighbourhoods. Residents in Cedar Cottage, Grandview Woodland, Hastings Sunrise, Kensington, Killarney, Renfrew Collingwood, Sunset and Victoria Fraserview. It's by appointment only, and residents in these neighbourhoods are being encouraged to register to receive a link to book their vaccination appointment. The clinic opens Saturday and runs until the end of the month.
The person is a woman in their 40s. She is stable and currently receiving treatment in hospital in Vancouver Coastal Health.
The first case of a rare blood clot in a person who received the Astrazeneca vaccine is recorded in BC. The province's top doctor reassuring this is extremely rare and outlines the symptoms to look out for.
Starting today, Rcmp and BC are enforcing the province's new ban on non-essential travel between health regions. The ban was first announced more than 2 weeks ago as a measure to stop the spread of COVID-19. This road check has been set up on Highway 3 near Manning Park, and it's been pretty quiet for most of the day. Other locations officers are monitoring are Highway 1 in the Boston Bar area, the old toll booth on the Coquihalla Highway, and along Highway 99 near Lillooet. Police will be able to check traffic in both directions.
Our officers here are speaking to drivers. If you do approach a road check, what you can expect is that the officer will be approaching from the passenger side for our safety reasons, speaking to the driver to identify the purpose of your travel, where you're coming from and where you're headed to. So if an officer does decide that a person is traveling for non-essential reasons, they will be asked to turn around. The purpose of these checks is to encourage people to stay home and to stay local.
The fine for violating the travel ban is $575.
I would like also to share that we have had our first case of vaccine-induced immune thrombotic thrombocytopenia, or VIT.
BC has recorded its first case of a rare blood clot in a person who received the Astrazeneca COVID-19 vaccine. The woman, who is in her 40s, is in stable condition at a hospital in the Vancouver Coastal Health region. Dr. Bonnie Henry urged the public Thursday to remember the likelihood of AstraZeneca causing a blood clot is about 1 in 100,000. To compare, you have a much greater chance of being struck by lightning at 1 in 15,300.
She followed up with her family doctor, who recognized that this might be related and did a blood test. So there is a blood test, and we've put out information to all physicians in British Columbia to remind them of the things to do.
So what signs and symptoms should people getting AstraZeneca keep an eye out for?
A persistent, severe headache, shortness of breath, chest pain or severe abdominal pain, and swelling or redness in a limb. These are things that should provoke you to get treatment and assessment right away.
Dr. Henry also suggests people who already received AstraZeneca as their first shot may be able to mix and match with Pfizer for their second dose. She also reiterated this kind of reaction to AstraZeneca is extremely rare.
So take a deep breath and be reassured that this is rare, that physicians know what to do, and that if you have any concerns, that you contact your healthcare provider. You can go to the emergency department if it's severe, and also you can call 811 and we can get you assessed and treated if needed.
Ashley Burr, City News.
BC is looking to build on today's milestone of 2 million COVID-19 shots in arms. Public health pulling out all the stops to register, book, and vaccinate everyone as they're eligible in one of the largest and hardest hit communities, Fraser Health.
It's important to remove every barrier possible to ensure that everybody registers and gets immunized as quickly as possible.
This includes mobile registration units, signing people up where they are.
One of the areas that we focused on is registering and increasing accessibility for vaccines through places of worship. In fact, gurdwaras have been used through community partners, and last weekend we've done registration there and going in actually with immunizations in the coming days as well.
With more supply, they're working through the H priority faster.
But I really encourage people to register, and when they get a chance to book right away. So because we are going to be moving through the age cohorts very quickly, particularly in hotspot areas.
A group of doctors in Surrey pressing to have it open to everyone.
Look at the makeup of Surrey, particularly. The average age of the residents is 39, but you're not eligible. You're eligible, but you're not going to get the vaccine unless if you're over the age of 49 as of today. And so our approach is that we should get vaccines to patients that want the vaccine.
He says they need to get creative.
Things that worked in Whistler may not work here. So we need to change the way we do things for Surrey to make it Surrey specific, because we are an urbanly dense community full of frontline workers.
Dr. Henry agrees the approach does need to be different.
Is that it's a very different thing to target a community with hundreds of thousands of people versus a community with a few thousand people.
While shots are now available for many priority groups, including Surrey grocery clerks 18 and up, it's not for everyone. And the region has challenges beyond the massive population and the fact they've had the majority of cases since the start of the pandemic.
There's unique areas within Surrey and Fraser Health regions, such as essential workers and sometimes very vulnerable disadvantaged populations where it's not easy for people to get away to get the immunization.
Compounded by lack of sick pay for the lowest paid.
It's an important part of workers having the agency to stay home when they're sick, and we know it's an important part of preventing workplace outbreaks.
Henry, and the province's bottom line is vaccinations are the way back to normal everywhere, especially in hard-hit Fraser Health. So if you don't find a way to register, they're looking to find you. The aim, not ice cream trucks blaring down the street, but close.
It's not probably quite that door to door, but absolutely going door to door and registering people and then providing them with the means of getting to the clinics.
For City News in Victoria, I'm News 1130's Lisa Yuzda.
There will be sufficient vaccines in country to vaccinate earlier than initially anticipated with the first dose, all those Canadians who want to have it.
A first COVID jab by Canada Day. Public Health talks seriously about deadlines moving up.
A man has been charged in connection with a deadly shooting in Surrey earlier this week. On Tuesday night, a 20-year-old woman was found with gunshot wounds at a home near 96th Avenue and 160th Street in the Guildford neighborhood. She later died from her injuries in hospital. A 24-year-old man was arrested and is now charged with second-degree murder. Anyone with information is asked to get in touch with police. A Facebook page once dedicated to the search for a missing woman from Port Moody now has a new name and a new purpose. It's called Justice for Trina. 48-year-old Trina Hunt's remains were found in Hope in late March, and her disappearance is now a homicide investigation. In a statement, Hunt's family writes they're touched by the outpouring of love and support they've received over the last few days, and they're optimistic police will bring them some answers soon. The Integrated Homicide Investigation Team has promised to deliver an update in the days ahead.
People got harassed verbally, got assaulted physically, and people got spit at, and you name it.
You know, we have a duty to keep people safe in the city, not only, as far as statistics go from crime, but also that feeling of safety.
A new community policing center has opened in the heart of Vancouver's Chinatown neighborhood in the midst of what's become a difficult pandemic year for one of the city's most historic neighborhoods.
Sometimes things will arise in the community that you don't want to call 911, you don't want to call the non-emergency number, but you just want to go and talk to somebody because it may not be an emergent situation where you need the police right away, but you need some advice.
Now, this community policing office isn't actually new. It's been in the neighborhood since 1992. However, this is a new location for the office. It's actually moved around a few times over the past 30 years. Before this, the office was on the second story of a nearby parking garage, but it's hoped that the increased visibility will help tackle mounting challenges in the neighborhood, from street crime to a sharp increase in anti-Asian attacks. Terry Young is a Vancouver Police staff sergeant. He says during the pandemic, Asian-related hate crimes have gone up more than 700%. He showed us some of the latest vandalism that hit the neighborhood and says it's especially concerning with so many seniors living nearby.
Seniors are more afraid now than a year ago in walking around the area.
I think the way it is now, it appears it is improving.
The Chinese Cultural Center is one of the places that found itself targeted by vandals in the past year. Fred Kwok says he's starting to see some early signs that things may be starting to turn.
For the moment, for the last month, it's improved quite a bit. And the street is cleaner and less of the camper homeless in the area.
He tells us he's relieved to see the new community policing office move next door, and that after a rough year, he believes the community is ready to focus on recovery.
I think people are eager to come out without this fear elements, and I think it will be a very positive, I would say, looking forward,
Police Chief Palmer echoes the optimism and says the surge in crime appears to be leveling off. He continues to urge victims to report incidents and that the department is working to close a language gap for online reporting of hate-related incidents.
That should be up and running by next week.
In Vancouver, David Zura, City News.
A 25-year-old woman has died after a workplace accident in Richmond. It happened yesterday at Boundary Road at Tree Island Steel, which produces and supplies steel and wire products around the world. WorkSafe BC and the Rcmp's Serious Crime Unit is looking into what happened.
There will be sufficient vaccines in country to vaccinate earlier than initially anticipated with the first dose, all those Canadians who want to have it.
From the start, federal health officials have used the end of September as a deadline for getting a COVID vaccine to every Canadian who wants one. But with a big ramp up in Pfizer deliveries, Major General Danny Fortin says we should have enough supply to get everyone their first jab by Canada Day.
So at the end of the second quarter, we will have received more than 40 million doses.
Recent models from the agency projected some public health measures could be lifted without risking a fourth wave when 75% of Canadians get a first jab. But public health says that model came before those 12 to 15 were approved to get Pfizer vaccines.
Now with the 12 to 15, just doing sort of the calculations, I certainly turned over to Major General Fortin, but that would add about an additional 1.63 million individuals who fall into that category as part of our calculations.
Major General Fortin says those 1.63 million adolescents would be covered by just 1 week of Pfizer deliveries, and those figures could still get better. For example, Moderna says it'll ship another 1 million doses the week of May 17th, but can't provide a schedule after that.
It's a matter of the provinces and territories executing that plan smoothly, and they've already shared some different timelines for meeting that objective. So I would defer to those individual provinces and territories to report on when they expect to have that cohort and the rest of the Canadian adult population vaccinated with a first dose.
In Ottawa, Xiaoli Li, City News.
And now some news about us. City News Vancouver and News 1130 have been recognized with an Edward R. Murrow Award for Best Digital in Canada for our website, citynews1130.com. The award recognizes our entire team of journalists and content producers for their hard work on digital over the last year during the COVID-19 pandemic.